Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. After like 2 or 3 weeks of absence, going to a folk festival and traveling to Barcelona, I'm finally back. I do generally apologize for the long wait, and I hope to get things back onto track soon. So, for my return, let's cut to the chase as I give you what I promised last time, as I look at another album by the Alan Parsons Project. Last year, in my 18th episode, I delved into the debut album Tales of Mystery and Imagination, which consisted of musical interpretations of various tales written by classic poet and writer Edgar Allan Poe. One thing to note about the various Alan Parsons Project albums is that, as concept albums, each is centered around a particular general theme or two. I already mentioned Tales of Mystery and Imagination and Edgar Allan Poe, but there's also the I, Robot album, which was mostly inspired by the stories of Isaac Asimov, Pyramid, which was influenced by the interest in the pyramids of Giza and the idea of pyramid power. Eve was about the struggles of women and feminism in general, and The Turn of a Friendly Card, which was mostly about gambling and betting. And would such a case be similar with this album as well? Well, let's jump into Alan Parsons' 1982 album, The Eye in the Sky. The cover is very simple and very minimalist, showing an eye, of course, in presumably a light green sky, specifically the Eye of Horus in this very gold kind of foil, which seems pretty interesting, as you might see from the reflection. And for those who may not know, the Eye of Horus is a symbol that's associated with ancient Egyptian religions and mythologies. Even if you don't know the exact name of it or the history and meaning behind it, it's likely you might have seen it at some point, whether as a tattoo or on a poster in a museum, or maybe even just came across it at some point while web surfing. A similar Egyptian theme was of course explored back in the 1978 album Pyramid, and this use of the eye can be used for many interpretations, which I might get into in a bit. But let's actually talk about the songs themselves, shall we? We begin the album with Sirius, as in seriously, this is a good starter. And what Alan Parsons Project album would be complete without having an opening instrumental track lasting for nearly 2 minutes, just shy of like 15 seconds. This one features a clavinet riff enhanced with some sort of delay effect, as well as some slamming chords, a brief guitar solo, and a backing orchestra, immediately giving this a very ominous yet dramatic mood and setting the tone for the most of the album to come. Apparently this came about when Alan wrote the title song to be the first track, but then he believed it needed an intro to build up and lead up to it, which was and is a good and wise choice on his part. Although it was originally written in a different key from that of the other, so while recording they had to adjust its key and pitch so that they'd fit together better than they already did. The song in question is named after what is considered by many to be the brightest star in the night sky, in the galaxy and universe. This astrological theme and motive would kind of carry over in some ways over to the titles of the first few following songs, and even some of the lyrics as well. Plus, this track would be featured in several films and TV shows, as well as trailers to said films and TV shows, and even uses entrance music for many people in sports. We then transition into the next track, Eye in the Sky, the title track. And a really good transition of that, on par with Dream Within a Dream and The Raven from Tales of Mystery and Imagination, and Voyager and What Goes Up from Pyramid. This song has a mostly easygoing riff from Ian Bearson, who also played in many albums by Kate Bush, including the guitar solo from Wuthering Heights. along with some bass line from David Payton, who also worked with Cage, as well as the likes of Elton John and Camel, and some percussion from drummer Stuart Elliott, who also played drums on various songs by Kate Bush. Seeing a pattern here? Including, but not limited to, Babushka, Dealing with God, Running Up That Hill, Hounds of Love, and Cloud Busting, as well as working with many people like Al Stewart, Roger Daltrey, and even Paul McCartney. So, quite the musicians there with a lot of credit, as you can imagine. We also get some mellow synths from Alan Parsons himself, as well as from the other half of the core project duo, the late great Eric Wolfson, who also provides the lead vocals here, in a delivery that reminds me a bit of Richard Wright from Pink Floyd. Here, he starts off by singing to us, telling us not to think sorry would be said easily or turning tables. He's probably just mad that turning the table causes drink to spill over or something. I mean, geez, it was just an accident. No need to get so gripey about it. He then warns that we had taken too many chances, and he refuses to give any more, as well as warning us not to say words that we're going to regret. Which is what I could easily say to trolls on YouTube and Twitter. And to not let the fire rush to our heads, assuming we don't have any smoke alarms installed inside our bodies or like fireproof hats or whatever. And then, in a very catchy chorus, Eric announces himself as the eye in the sky and says how he can read your mind, make rules, and even cheat you blind, along with some backing vocals from the late Chris Rainbow. By the way, when someone with a cool surname like that has to pass away, you know you're living in an unfair world. And even if he isn't able to see literally, that doesn't matter since Eric can still read your mind. Yes, Eric Wolfson and Alan Parsons can look through your mind. And they have. Some of you might have had some strange specific fetish fantasies. And they're quite disturbing. Anyways, like with the cover, this eye, given the lyrics in context, could mean many things, like someone keeping a close eye on any and every action their partner may make in their relationship, a helicopter parent watching over their children, the big brother from 1984 watching you and all, the all-eyeing sea of God, or the eye of Sauron looking for Frodo and the One Ring, as well as his contact lens. Anyways, this single would probably be the project's most successful, having reached number 3 in the US Billboards. And I can imagine why. This is a good mix and balance between artsy rock and accessible pop music. Next is Children of the Moon, no doubt the offspring of the Man in the Moon. In this groovy track that starts with a slightly mysterious bass and snare, before going into an opening similar to that of Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill, bassist David Payton takes the spotlight in the lead vocals. Among the bassy music, the lyrics here are somewhat more enigmatic and even more fantastical. First referencing the writing on the wall, again playing into a few underlying biblical motifs and themes. He says how the words seem empty because there's nothing there at all. Or rather that they're buzzwords used by people on Twitter without any context or meaning. And how we let the wise men beat the drums too soon. Well, they're not so wise anymore since they're now drumming out of beat and we have to take it back from the top again. The song could very well be a precaution on how easily led astray we could be by cults and faiths and religions, or at least certain people who may claim to know the way to enlightenment, but as Eric goes to sing, we let the blind man lead the way for too long. Possibly a subtle nod to the phrase, in the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Even the title of the song, Children of the Moon, sounds like the name of a cult in a way. No one to turn to, nowhere to run to, we're lost in the middle of the hopeless world. We could really be using a GPS or the map app on a smartphone right about now. Then we get to his chorus, where he sings harmoniously in an almost Beatle-like way that the children of the moon and how they watch the world go by while hiding from the sun and sky and are blinded by the light in their eyes. I guess their games of hide and seek and staring contests with the sun didn't go so well in their favors. And by the way, the music shifts in certain moods in every way, and it almost feels reminiscent of certain tracks from Tales of Mystery and Imagination, even sounding very similar to them as well. Then in the second verse, he says to follow the pilgrim to the Temple of the Dawn, where it turns out the altar's empty and the sacrifice is gone. Well, it's likely it got confiscated and rescued by the SAS, or the CIA. And in the end, we let the madmen write the golden rules and were no more than mortal fools. This may represent how people like us might realize very late that the leaders we thought to be wise and enlightening, like messiahs and all, turn out to just be a bunch of crazy nutters. So, basically, religious fundamental conservatives. And we people soon realize how deceived and manipulated we are. And after another chorus and above the orchestral arrangements by Andrew Powell, Ian plays another sweet and underrated guitar solo that almost sounds on par with something out of David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. Then afterwards, we go into some snaring drums, like in Bring the Boys Back Home from The Wall, along with some synth horns and a low and slow rising choir-like vocal, as this too transitions into the very next track. And that track is called simply Gemini. And so far, keeping with a particular reoccurring astrological or astrographic theme, we have had the star Sirius, Eye in the Sky, Children of the Moon, and now, of course, the constellation Gemini. The astrological star sign is often represented by a pair of twins. I myself happen to be Gemini, so I could feel a connection to this track in a way. A slow, short, yet very sweet song. Chris Rainbow takes on the vocals this time, and it flows with emotion. After singing various verbs in what could be described as a dreamlike state, Chris sings how he couldn't say why we and he are Gemini, likely using the sign to represent a bond of sorts, be it a romantic one, sexual, platonic, friendly, soulmates, etc. As if he's wondering what kind of relationship he's actually got himself into, as well as how and why they even had such a bond to begin with. Then he sings that if he tried to write 1,000,000 words a day, and he could see a shadow coming closer than drifting away. He was no doubt writing another one of his fan fictions, and he's trying to make sure that no one was looking over him. Then he sings the line, "We're traveling 1,000,000 worlds away," which he likely means that no matter how distant they may be from each other or how far they may go, their bonds will always remain strong and unbreakable. And in spite of its short length, this is still a pretty soothing, even beautiful track, especially with the polyphonic vocals provided from the Rainbow Man himself, giving us a very multi-layered and almost heavenly vibe. Side 1 ends with Silence and I. The longest song of the album at about 7¼ minutes, this is definitely one of the more proggier tracks here, not just because of its length, but also the seemingly different sections this piece has, not unlike, say, Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen or Paranoid Android by Radiohead. Starting off with a tender piano ballad and a bit of what sounds like a bassoon as well, as Eric Woolfson sings how if he could cry out loud over sorrows he known and secrets he heard, it would ease his mind. I guess if crying really does make you feel better, then go for it, dude. Pity party, I guess. Then in the chorus, he says that he and Silence are two of a kind, and that they need a chance to talk things over, and that they'll find a way to work it all out. Turns out he and Silence are going into marriage counseling, and, well, I joke some more, but honestly, this could likely be about a loner or an introvert coming to grips with their isolation, with, well, Silence as their only acquaintance and accompaniment. In the second verse, Eric goes on to sing how he'd often be afraid of the smile of the clown, while other kids would just laugh along about it instead. I guess Eric Wolfson had a little running with the Joker, Pennywise, John Wayne Gacy, or maybe even one of the ones that Billy from Grim Adventures believes would destroy us all! References. Then after another chorus, we get an orchestral bit with strings and horns and everything, sounding pretty dramatic and all, but soon the mood changes as the music suddenly turns bright and cheery, as if the feelings of fear and isolation had been washed away completely, and our loner here might actually finally open up. It almost sounds cinematic and something you'd hear out of an old film score or a musical. Not only does it contrast with the rather mellow and almost tragic sound of the vocal parts, but it's also a bit of irony considering the silence in the title and chorus. The erratic, fast-paced horn bits, plus another great guitar solo, seem to represent how easily overwhelming such emotions can be to such a lonely lad like this here. To me, this interlude alone is a great example of Alan and Eric's songwriting, as well as their music production as well. Soon enough, the music dies down again back to normal, as Eric sings the third and last verse as he hears the cries of a leaf that fell off a tree into the ground. Must have heard those suicidal leaves from that brief segment from Monty Python's Meaning in Life. Point to you if you remember that. He then hears the call of an echoing voice, but when he looks, there's no one around. So he's either pranked, or he heard SpongeBob and Patrick when they got covered in invisible spray, or he's just flat out paranoid. Either case is quite possible, frankly. And after the last chorus, we get an equally brilliant outro and coda with that epic orchestra and another sweet guitar solo, as it all soon fades out, ending the first half of the album. It's honestly no wonder why Daft Punk took a really tiny vocal sample from this song for their track Face to Face, along with another sample or two from another song of this album. Though we'll get to that soon enough.